Hello everyone, this is Ben, and what we're going to do is show you an easy way to find the center point of a piece of wood like this without actually measuring the piece of wood. It can be difficult to measure pieces of wood like that. They're not always going to be a real clear distance, and doing the math, can be done, and getting the number and dividing by 2, but there's a lot quicker way. And look at on that side's 1/16 short of 1.5 inches. It's really aggravating, to do that math. If there's just a simpler way to get through it, well, there is a simpler way. So we're going to start by showing you a whole bunch of different ways to do this technique to find the center point. I'm going to start with this quick square, regular old quick square. So I made a square line, just 90 degrees to the edge there, all the way across. I'm going to show you a bunch of different ways to do this, but the first way is going to be with the quick square. So then what I'm going to do is, once I made the square line, I'm going to measure using the quick square a 1/2 inch from one edge, and then flip over and a 1/2 inch from the other edge. It doesn't have to be a 1/2 inch. It can just be basically any distance you like, almost, just in a little bit from the edge, as long as it's the same on both sides. And now we're going to use the angled side of it, slide it up till it meets that, and boom, there's one line. Slide it up till it meets that, and there we go. Once it meets that line, boom. And so that, where those two lines cross, is halfway across that board. So what we're going to do is prove that to you. And I'm going to show you a bunch of different ways. So this is a sliding square. It's one of my favorite tools. It has so many uses. So we're going to slide it over to that point and then lock it so that it's accurate, and then boom, it's halfway. And in fact, the cool thing with this video is I'll prove you that we're at halfway without ever actually having to measure halfway or ever doing any math. We can prove it with that little thing. Okay, so now let's do it another way. So this time I'm going to use a bevel gauge, a regular old bevel gauge that measures an angle, just to show you that there's more than one way to do this. And so that's the bevel gauge. I will need to make a square line without using the bevel gauge. But anyway, so I'll just use this for a square this time. I'm not sure how you could do this without some sort of square starting for that first line. But boom, there you go. Now I need a way to make a notch that's a little bit in from each side, but it's the same distance on each side. Didn't really see a good way to do that with the bevel gauge, but maybe you can come up with one. All you need is just a way to make a line you can go by in from the side a little bit. Maybe you could do it with that. I don't know. But I just want to show you the versatility of this technique, that you can kind of just use whatever you have on hand. So what I did is I just grabbed a bolt. We'll use a bolt. And we'll just use the head of the bolt, measure the head of the bolt from one side, and using my finger to line it up with the edge, head of the bolt from the other side. Alright, now what we can do with the bevel gauge is set it to any angle you like. It doesn't have to be a 45-degree angle like quick square. Any angle you like. Slide it on up. There you go, and boom. And as long as it's the same angle on both sides and it's the same distance on both sides, measured from that same line, and there you have it, halvesies. So let's use the sliding square to check it again. And you'll see every time, if there's any error in making this, it's within the thickness of a pencil line. But that one's dead on there, right? Okay, so there's a second way to do it. So now let's we'll use that right there. Oh, I got another piece of wood. Okay, there we go. Alright, so what I want to show you is sometimes it can be difficult if you have a rounded over edge. That's one of the problems with a tape measure. It's like, where am I measuring to? Am I measuring to the tip top of that rounded over edge, which is maybe a whole 1/16 difference, or in this case that's a 1/4 inch round over, so it can really throw off my measurement. Am I measuring down to that actual face down there of the board, or am I measuring to, you know, the tip top edge? So that's one of the problems with this method, is that, you know, with the method of making a measurement and dividing by 2, you may not measure the thickness of the board accurately, and so that's a problem. So, and I'll demonstrate that, especially over here, this little tabletop that I have. It has a much bigger round over on it, and so it can be difficult for you to, you know, for me or you or anyone to figure out, where am I measuring to? Am I measuring to the top edge where the round over starts, or somewhere within that round over? And the problem is most 2x4s are sold with a round over. And the other problem is even, you know, any piece of wood doesn't have a perfect little edge to measure to. This technique that I'm showing you in this video bypasses having to accurately measure the thickness of the board. You don't really have to do that. So now I'm going to show you with the sliding square, my favorite way. First I'm going to make that square line, and I'm able to hold the square down low on the board so that I know that it's not affected by that round over. Okay, and now all I have to do is just set that thing to some little distance, any old distance, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you 0.78 centimeters, it doesn't matter, as long as it's the same on both sides. And then I'm going to use the other side of the square. That other side of the square gives me a 45-degree angle. And the other one. And boom. So there's our halfway point. And so now I'm going to double check it with the sliding square. Make sure that I didn't mess up. Tighten it down. And we'll flip it over and show you that we're dead on. A little bit of shadow there from my terrible lighting. And now let's show you a really basic way of doing this. I'm going to do it without using any sort of angled square, because you don't actually have to have a square that does an angle. You know, you don't have to have that. You can just have like a ruler basically, and a normal square. So what I'm going to use is a rusty old framing square. And we'll do very similar technique. We need that square line, so I can hold it deep down on that edge and get that square line. That way I'm not affected by that round over. There's my square line. Alright. Now, for this technique you need 2 square lines, since you're not going to have an angled angle gauge or anything like that. I'm going to take the bolt. I'm going to take the bolt up and just use the head of the bolt at the top line. The thickness of the head of the bolt. Can't really see from my big brown hands there. But the thickness of the head of the bolt, and you've got 2 lines. And I'm going to lay the bolt down and just use the length of the bolt on the other line. As long as it's some other length on one line, it's the same on both sides. So now I've got 2 points a little bit in on that top line and 2 points much further in on that bottom line. Now I'm just going to use that little ruler. Just about any straight edge, you know, that kind of doesn't matter. You could use the square, you could use the yardstick. Boom. And there's one. And we're just lining up those 2 points. They're the same distance in along the square lines every time, and boom. And there we have it. Didn't really matter what the angles were as long as everything was symmetrical. Alright, and so now got the slide square set back up, and we'll check this one more time. There you go. And boom. There you go. It's hard for you to see it with the shadow, but hopefully that shows you how to do it. And that's an easy way to